This is the Prairie Weekly. I'm Dave Thompson. Thanks for joining us today. Our guest on the program is Kevin Cramer, North Dakota's Tourism Director. Kevin, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Dave. My pleasure.
And we wanted to talk to Kevin today because he has alluded to maybe some different directions he'd like to take tourism in North Dakota. And let's just start with that. You did talk at North Dakota Broadcasters Association. You were quoted in other media, too, about saying that there might be some different focus from your tourism promotion agency. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, first of all, I have no argument with the focus as it has been for the last several years. It's been very good. It's been very image-oriented. We've spent a good deal of money in proximity markets such as Minneapolis, Duluth, Sioux Falls, of course the Canadian markets, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Regina, in Billings, Montana. And those are the markets that are important to us because they're closest to us. They're the people that can travel to our state within a day and have some knowledge of our state, and it's all that we can afford to be in. And so we're going to continue in those markets. But what's been done the last 5-6 years is that we've run a lot of very good image ads in those markets so that people, as they think about North Dakota, they think of a good place, a place that they'd want to travel to. And one of the things that's interesting, we've been surveying the folks in these markets for the past 5 years. One of the questions we ask, of course, is what is your first image of North Dakota when you hear the term North Dakota? Well, for the last 5 years, the number one answer to that question has been cold and flat. Well, that doesn't project the kind of image that makes you want to travel or take a vacation, at a place like that. Well, this year, for the first time, the number one image in those markets was the Badlands. Now, the Badlands is a much more romantic, appealing vacation spot, of course, than someplace that's cold and flat. So it clearly has worked. That image campaign has worked. Now people have a good image of North Dakota. What we want to do that's a little bit different is, first of all, we want to continue to enhance a good image of North Dakota to the out-of-state traveler. But we want to maybe provide a little more information that so-called closes the sale, kind of tells them, okay, now they've got this good image of North Dakota, but what can we do when we get to these Badlands? Can we take a trail ride? Is there camping? What kind of wildlife can we view? Where is it? Same thing with, whether it's the Red River Valley, whether it's the American Legacy Tour. I guess what we want to do is just make it a little more attraction specific. And so we'll continue some of these image ads, and we'll certainly continue with the imagery, but we will be doing a new TV ad that tells specifically about the American Legacy Tour. We'll do one that tells specifically about Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And of course, the fact that Theodore Roosevelt National Park is a national park in and of itself is credible, a story that isn't told enough. People in Minneapolis think of a national park, they think of Yellowstone or Glacier. Well, we have a national park. That's the closest one to Minneapolis. It's the closest one to South Dakota. And so we're just going to get a little more specific and hopefully do more to close the sale.
It's kind of interesting. It seems like a logical progression to me, just sitting
Right.
here. You did change the image and now say, okay, now that you have this image of North Dakota, here are some of the things you can see. Right,
exactly. And so when we say we're changing the scope a little bit, I don't know that we're changing it as much as you said, the next logical progression.
Mm-hmm. Evolution type
Evolution,
thing versus
exactly.
revolution, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
How much money will you be spending in the campaign?
Well, our budget for advertising, actually I should say our operating budget for this biennium is exactly the same as it was last biennium. So in order for us to do things a little differently or to do any added things, we have to steal from some other area that was that we spent money on last biennium. Well, I think that we're going to be able to do some things different. One of the things, of course, if we're going to get a little more attraction specific, we're going to have to back some of that television advertising up with some print advertising. Because in a 30 or a 60-second television ad, you can't list all of the accommodations in Theodore Roosevelt National Park or all the accommodations on the American Legacy Tour or all the hotels that you can stay at in Fargo or Grand Forks. So we need to back it up with a little more substantive print. And so obviously in order to do that, we need to get creative with some financing. And the situation is that I think we can do that. because this is the second biennium in a row where our operating budget's been $3 million as opposed to $1 million, obviously we come in with a stronger background or a stronger history. So I think that we're going to be able to do a few added things as well.
Do you envision working more closely and maybe asking for some financial support from, say, Fargo-Moorhead CVB, Bismarck-Mandan CVB, Grand Forks CVB, that type of thing?
Well, we don't ever ask for financial support from them, but we are looking to do some more things cooperatively with the Convention and Visitors Bureaus. One of those things that we've already met with all the CVB directors about, and we're progressing now with, is the idea of a Canadian spring getaway. Up in the Canadian market, our marketing in Canada has been different than it has been in Minnesota, largely. We do a little bit of the Western stuff up in Canada, but for the most part, what we market up there is our shopping, our nightlife, the entertainment, we call them getaway spots. We already know Canadians like coming here. The problem is, of course, is that in the last year, the Canadian exchange rate, which has been the most attractive thing for Canadians, that has gone bad on us, and it's not very attractive anymore. So we need to do some other things to continue the Canadians' desire to come here. There's no question that Canadians still want to come to North Dakota because they want to come to the United States. They have a natural inclination to want to go to the United States. But these barriers keep coming up, like the exchange rate, like the border tax, the taxes that both the provinces and the federal government up in Canada have put on people bringing goods back. And now, of course, there's talk that the Clinton administration wants to add a tax, a border crossing tax, and that's very disturbing. And I hope that we can stop that. But as these barriers come up, we need to counter those. So we're working with the CVBs on a cooperative effort where we would spend more of our marketing money up in Canada advertising a spring fling type of a deal, and then their marketing would be geared around that same thing. They'd provide some entertainment or some type of festival or something in the spring. That's a slow time for them and for us, and it's a slow time for the Canadians, and maybe we can get them to come down for a couple weeks.
What you're talking about is something to entice them to come on down, and whether it be some big party or just some kind of event that Canadians might be interested in.
Yeah, we're thinking of something that would span 2 weeks and 3 weekends, and by that, and it doesn't need to be anything specific. It's not like a Hust Fest. It's not like a Folk Fest or anything like that. It's a time that we simply set aside as a Canadian spring vacation. We create the vacation for them, and then we just have a cooperative marketing theme. And we're all on the same page around the state, and that means if you have a concert or a craft fair, something coming up at the Bismarck Civic Center or the Fargo Dome or maybe the Chester Fitz Auditorium, as you're planning your schedule for that particular 2-week period, you keep in mind that this is a time we're going to be marketing for Canadians to come down here, and hopefully that can evolve into a huge annual event because, like I say, they already like to come here. We're close to them. We just need to create more reasons for them.
And of course, spring, as you said, is kind of a downtime.
Well, the nice thing is our spring comes a week or two before theirs. So we're looking at a time in probably April when our golf courses are open before theirs, that kind of thing. It's a little warmer here than it is there, and that's not always going to be the case, but in general it is. So they've got cabin fever. It's a slow time for our hotels, motels, restaurants. Let's all help each other.
I'm very curious about the Canadian thing because the reports were this year that the Canadian traffic, cross-border traffic, is down.
Yes.
This year. You attribute that to the these proposals about taxes and the excise taxes that the Canadian government at the time was proposing?
That's certainly a big part of it, and the other thing, of course, is the exchange rate. If the exchange rate is 80% or 81%, which it has been for the most part in recent years, it's financially beneficial for Canadians to come down here and shop. Right now, in the last few months, it's ranged from 73, 74, 75%, and that's just not attractive enough. And that's, it's not, they no longer can come here, buy gas, and go home for nothing, And so that weighs on it. And then, of course, the fact that the Canadian government has figured it out. Let's face it, they watched droves and droves of Canadians going to the United States every weekend, and they're starting to create some incentives for people to stay home.
Is there a figure? Is 80% the figure, basically?
80% is kind of the rule of thumb figure. At 80%, it's easy. At 80%, they'll come, it's just a mental block. It really is. At 78, they're going, is it worth it? And at 73%, they're going, it's probably isn't worth it. But it's funny because once that happens, then you see a slowdown. But then after a couple of months, it's like they grow calluses or something, and pretty soon, you know what? Let's go down there anyway because you know what? The prices are lower, so it makes up for that 27%, and so it's for by and large psychological.
If we get better, and the bottom line then is if we get a chance to get maybe back to 80% exchange rate, we'll see a lot more Canadians.
Oh,
come back.
there's no question about that. No question about that.
I'm very curious about this, and I'm going to throw you a curveball, and
Okay.
it just occurred to me. Do you see any effect on your industry with the change of government in Canada from the progressive conservatives to the liberals in power?
Well, I don't know if we do. It's possible. There's no question that it's worth watching. We have to watch the political atmosphere even when we're buying time, because obviously we buy a lot of time in Canada. That's one advantage that we have with the exchange rate the way it is. $1,000 worth or $10,000 worth of advertising in Winnipeg is worth more to us now. But so we do have to watch that. There's no question that the jury is out on NAFTA, obviously, but NAFTA is something that has the potential to affect tourism. Mm-hmm. We don't know if it will or not yet, but it certainly has the potential to. Any time that crossing the border is hindered or made easier, it affects tourism. Right now, as I said, the Clinton administration has a proposal related now to NAFTA to put a $2.50 fee on people coming into or crossing their border, coming into the United States. Well, that would affect Canadians. That would affect tour operators. It would affect cruise lines. It affects, tourists. And of course, that's bad for us, especially at being a border state.
I suppose have you been in contact with the congressionals about this 250 proposal?
Well,
I know it was floated just I think it's just a couple weeks ago.
We just learned it. I would say in less than a week ago actually is when we learned it, and so we're trying to get some further information, make sure we're on firm foundation, and then we will certainly respond through the congressional delegation.
What do you think that would what do you have any kind of ballpark figures on what that might do?
We don't, and that's why we haven't reacted yet with much, because we don't know exactly how it would affect us, and I don't know if you can know for sure. But we're working with there's a national tour association, the TIA, Travel Industry Association, the USTTA, which is a Department of the Commerce. It's an agency within the Department of Commerce, and so those are our folks that are on the front line trying to gather all that information, so we know exactly what the ramifications would be.
Over the next several months, it's going to be something to bear watching. Not only that situation, but of course the change in the Canadian government,
Right.
what might happen with NAFTA. There's a lot of things that tangentially might affect tourism in North Dakota.
No question, but by the same token, we can't let that handcuff us. We need to continue marketing our state in our proximity markets and doing all those things, while at the same time paying attention to the political climate. I mean, there's nothing we can do now about the Clinton gas tax, for example. That, there's no question, is a deterrent to travel, but it's here. So now we move onward.
You live with it. Well, that the fact that there is a gas tax increase now and was put on as part of that budget agreement, is that going to mean people are going to stay closer to home, do you think?
Well, I think it does, and of course we're after proximity markets. We're after people who are fairly close to home. But what will determine that, of course, is how does that affect airline prices? I mean, if you're living in Minneapolis, you can drive to Bismarck, but you'd probably fly to California. Well, does it affect air travel more than it affects ground travel? Well, next year, of course, it's the tax doesn't affect air travel, but it does affect car travel, so it makes it more appealing maybe to fly. There's another factor in the budget plan. The Clinton budget was, of course, they reduced the allowable deduction for travel or for meals and entertainment from I think it was 20% to 50%, or 80% to 50%, and of course that's a detriment to vacationing and to travel as well. So there are a lot of political things that we got to keep an eye on, as well as as marketing.
I have to ask you this because I just thought of that. You talked about airline travel a little bit. With North Dakota losing a couple of its major carriers and perhaps one more pulling out, does that concern you as in the tourism industry?
It concerns me a lot, Dave, for a number of reasons. First of all, the more difficult it is to get here, obviously the less likely people are to come here. The governor talked about, we've talked about wanting to expand into international markets. Well, the only way we can do that, and we believe we have a real hot commodity in Western culture, a hot commodity to the Europeans, especially Germans, who are very interested in Custer and Sitting Bull and the mythic West, if you will. The problem is there's only one way for you to get here from Europe, and that's to fly. And if that becomes difficult, then it makes it impossible for us to go after that market. The other thing is, the only real efficient way to market internationally is to co-op with other states, or to go through tour operators. Tour operators deal in volumes of people. They deal in selling a tour by the jet load. And again, if it's difficult, if there are not accommodations or means of traveling via air, we're going to lose out on that market. The other thing that concerns me about it is, we have a film commission, and we're just starting to get some breaks, and we're getting active in trying to bring some folks, bring some movies to North Dakota. Well, one of the problems North Dakota has is it's perceived as being remote. Well, if we don't have any jets flying into North Dakota pretty soon, it is remote, and that's not going to happen. Obviously, there'll always be at least one or two carriers, but the fewer there are, the more difficult our job becomes.
So maybe your hope is that one of the regional carriers, GP Express or the other one, Great Lakes Aviation,
right,
might upgrade someday to like 737s or MD-80s or something like that.
No question about it. That'd be great. In fact, we have a couple of movie makers just arriving today in Dickinson via United Express. They're coming from Denver, and so there's a case where it actually worked out very nicely. They were able to fly to Dickinson, whereas it might have been more complicated the other way. But at any rate, there's no question that losing airlines hurts the travel industry.
You also mentioned just very, very briefly about getting together with other states and maybe regions to talk about marketing the region, for example, in Europe. Right. I believe in 1980-81 there was the idea of the Heartland tour package, which included North Dakota, Minnesota, and Manitoba. Now, is that on the back burner, or is that still being discussed?
Well, it still is being discussed, and I know that the Convention and Visitors Bureaus in the eastern part of the state have been working on some type of a Red River Trail with Manitoba. I am going to be sometime yet before the end of this year going up to Winnipeg to meet with the Manitoba tourism director about the possibility of putting together some type of a joint international tour, and by that I mean something we can market internationally as an international tour. Where they could maybe land in Winnipeg, get in a motor coach and tour the Red River Valley, come west and take in our American Legacy tour. Of course, take in the International Peace Garden, which is so important symbolically, especially at a time like we're going through now. And then, of course, take a Canadian route, and it truly would have an international flavor. That is one idea we've talked about. Another is, of course, we are members of the Old West Trail, and that's that is the world's most well-known cooperative marketing effort for tourism, and it's been a great it's just been a great organization for us to be part of.
Yeah, Old West Trail is approaching 30, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I was thinking about watching those commercials, when I was in high school in North Dakota.
Cody yeah.
Come out here, the Old West Trail country.
Yeah.
So you've apparently had some preliminary conversations with Canadians. They seem to be pretty excited about this thing.
Well, they're in a similar situation to us. They have the same kind of budget constraints we have. They like to go into some larger markets, but they can't afford to do it individually. We can't afford to do it individually. It has some other appeal to me in that, of course, as the Canadian government begins to, I like to put it, fight back with these taxes and fees and trying to keep more of their people at home. It's like the old adage: if you can't beat them, join them, type of a deal. And maybe by doing this, we can help each other rather than work against each other.
I'm also curious about something that we talked before we started taping this program, and that's about some national ad buys that you folks are going to be trying.
Well, actually, they're not, the buys aren't going to be national.
They're not going to be national.
They're going to be regional. However, it's taken advantage of a national show. ABC Television is going to be airing the director's version of Dances with Wolves. This will be the first time it's been on television. And they're running it in two parts, November 7th and November 10th. And the director's version is longer. It's hard to imagine, but it's longer than was the box office version. It's got more scenery. There's more clips of the imagery. And what we're going to do is we're going to be buying ad time on stations in Minnesota, Canada, South Dakota, Montana, and we're going to be running what is come to be known as our Heaven and Hell commercial, which features the Badlands, it features the Indian imagery, it features a coyote howling. In fact, if we hadn't already made the ad and we were going to go, well, we should create an ad to run during Dances with Wolves, this is the one we would create. It talks about a time when two cultures clashed, and it's just it's a beautiful ad that projects the imagery and the theme that the movie Dances with Wolves projects. And so you've got an audience that is going to be watching that already has an appreciation for the very thing that we're going to be advertising. So it's not what a normal time for us to be buying television. However, it is the time when Dances with Wolves is going to be running, and we just thought it'd be a nice experiment to try. So we are buying that in Minneapolis, Duluth, and then, like I said, some of the other proximity markets.
How much do you budget for that then?
Well, this buy will be probably around $15,000.
Okay.
That's not a big buy for us when you consider that we're buying the Minneapolis market, especially, which is a very expensive market.
But you are targeting. It's a really targeted audience.
You know, I don't know of any way that you could find a better niche and target them on a network televised show than this opportunity provides for us. It really is a targeted. Usually broadcaster, especially television advertising, is more shotgun than it is targeted. But this is very targeted, no question about it.
Something else I would like to just discuss with you briefly, and that's the impact of Native American gambling. The casinos that are opening up, and the one that's going to open up south of Bismarck, Mandan here, they're doing very well. How do you tie into Native American casinos, or do you?
Oh, we definitely do. We tie in by we feature them. We certainly list them in our vacation planning guide. We keep all of their brochures and their promotional literature, and we include that in any fulfillment package that is sent out to somebody who requests that kind of information. We have some, we'll feature them in our vacation planning guide, pictures, things like that, what kind of accommodations are available there. So there's no question that plays a role in tourism.
Do you how significant a role do you think it plays?
Well, it's still relatively new, and but I think the Canadian market especially is very interested in gambling. If you were to go out and look at the license plates, which is the best way to check it, to check this kind of thing out at a casino, you'd see a fair number of Canadian license plates. The other thing that is easy to monitor, and where you see some real instant results with regard to Native American gaming or any casino, is that you see a lot of motor coaches. And motor coach marketing is a very efficient way to market because you're 40 or 50 people in one vehicle, and you only have to convince a motor coach tour operator that this is a legitimate attraction, is a legitimate stop on your way someplace. And if one person is convinced, it results in several hundred people coming to that attraction.
Motor coach business is pretty good for North Dakota.
It is very good for North Dakota, and it's been consistently better every year. Our motor coach traffic goes up every year, and it's an area that we continue to refine and become more aggressive in.
It's funny you should mention that motor coach tours have become, they've become very important for North Dakota. We have several attractions that are on top 100 lists and things
Right.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet here comes a study out of this week saying that North Dakota cities are not the best places in the world to live. It's kind of interesting. All these
we
surveys.
know that is very bogus. I mean, and I think that the average traveler knows it is. I mean, you only have to watch the national news to know that Miami is not the best place to vacation in the world, and certainly compared to Bismarck or Fargo or some other North Dakota city. So that was an unfortunate report. Although I do think it got the credibility it deserved, which was about none.
Yes. Just in the few minutes we have left, what do you expect for looking ahead for 95-97? Do you have any preliminary thoughts about what direction you might be taking?
Well, we'd like to. Yeah, I do. One of the things I'd like to do is if tourism continues to grow as an industry, and it has consistently, even in drought-stricken years and flood-stricken years, it continues to grow as an industry. It becomes more important as other industries become less uncertain. And so what I'd like to see is I'd like to see our agency's budget grow a little bit, not our agency, but maybe the budget grow a little bit that would allow us to spend even more dollars advertising to some other markets. I'd like to do some advertising in Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska. Those are still close markets with an appreciation for travel, and we have something we could offer them if we could just tell our story there. So, if anything, I'd just like to see us have even more money to put into advertising in some different markets.
Talk about airlines. Do you anticipate spending very much money in putting ads in maybe Northwest's magazine or anything like that? Or?
Probably not, because the kind of print advertising we'll do will be geared toward backing up our advertising on television. So if we're running a flight of American Legacy Tour promotion ads in Minneapolis, we'd want to follow it up with ads in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that have more information, and that would be the kind of print advertising I would see us doing, as opposed to maybe a Northwest Airlines type of thing. One other thing, you talk about the future and what I'd like to see. One other thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see some movies made in North Dakota, and we are putting a lot more emphasis on the film commission, and we appointed a new film commission, largely new, with some pretty well-known people on it, some real experts in the field, and we're organizing a reception or a cocktail party of some sort out in Hollywood with former North Dakotans in the business like Dick and Kerry Clark and Shadow Stevens and Angie Dickinson, and a whole bunch of people that are writers, producers, and directors, and try to break into that business a little bit too.
I think we sometimes forget that there are a number of native North Dakotans who are working in Hollywood.
Well, I am just amazed when I look, and one of the first things I did was had Jeff Esslinger, our film commissioner, put together an inventory of those people. I mean, there are people that are cameramen, that are directors, that are producers, assistant producers that you wouldn't believe that are out there. And we contacted the universities and they got their alumni lists, and there's just great potential. And the thing is that I always say is, whether you're buying gas or having your car serviced or your house painted or making a movie, you want to do business with people you know. And I think that's especially a part of North Dakotans' fiber. And so by identifying these people, getting them together at one place out in Hollywood while we're out there, letting them get to know us, we can help. They can help us. We can help them, and they can learn to help each other, and become a fraternity, if you will. And so hopefully we'll make something happen.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. The half hour is gone.
Well, it's amazing how fast it goes.
It sure is. There's a lot of issues to talk about. We could talk about for an hour.
You bet.
Our guest today on the Prairie Weekly, Kevin Cramer, North Dakota's tourism director. And for the Prairie Weekly, I'm Dave Thompson.
If you have ever wished that a friend or relative could hear the Prairie Weekly, cassette copies are available and can be shipped directly to your friend or relative. The number to call is 1-800-767-1929. Be prepared to specify the air date of the show you are ordering. The phone number again, 1-800-767-1929.